following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Degraw's Yankees. I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and we have a surprise. Jack, introduce the returning guest.
Well, it's my good friend who helped me get started in this, so he's the one to blame, Wayne Unger. So welcome, Wayne.
Hello. Thank you. Hello, gentlemen. And, you know, I'm so disappointed that that we're first recording now. I thought our conversation was being recorded, so now the whole world doesn't know that Ralph can't shut up. Oh, I just let that go. I'm sorry, that slipped. But so yeah,
that's a real scoop, Wayne. You got a real scoop there. Ralph can't shut up, boy. News of the day. Ralph is going to shut up because we don't have much time for this, and it's a very special thing getting you both together. It's spring training. The first day is spring training, literally. And I'm just going to ask one question. I'm ignorant. Do you guys, you're down at spring training, Jack, do you guys get to watch workouts, early workouts, free, or do they charge for that as well?
Well, Ralph, they're free. Now, the thing is, right now, the team is over to Himes. The guys are throwing bullpen. They're taking hitting practice. Now, Thursday, they come over to Steinbrenner Field. They'll be over there at 11 o'clock for 6 days. The workouts are free. And then next Tuesday, they have full squad workouts for 4 days. And then on the 23rd of this month, the exhibition season starts. They're at the Red Sox, and the first home game for the Yankees at Steinbrenner is 2 weeks from today. But the games are free, and another good thing, March 12th, they have the minor league games over to Himes, the minor league complex, and those games are free, and a lot of times the regular Yankee pitchers go over there and pitch. So that's something to keep in mind if you don't want to spend $80 to stand in the outfield.
Wow.
I think that's going to be my plan. And I got to say something. I moved to Florida in July of 2017, and so my first spring training was actually last year. So my cousins were coming down from New York, and they're Met fans, and so we made plans to go to Port St. Lucie to catch a Mets spring training game, and a week later, my oldest son and I went up to Tampa, and I met up with Jack there. And, I have to tell you that it was a little bit of a letdown. And because, one, you don't get to see all the regulars. The regulars that do play are in the game for a limited time. And you know what? It really doesn't matter if the team wins or loses. It was just so anticlimactic. I think maybe also my expectations were a little too high as well. And because of security and because of the netting and everything, you don't have the access that I used to see, in the media many years ago. This is great. Like, look at that. You can get autographs. You get to see the players up close. It's changed a little bit. So for me, it was a little bit anticlimactic. I'm still gonna make a trek to to spring training on different days. But for me, after all these years, I have to say it was a little anticlimactic.
Well, Wayne, I come down here in 2005, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, you used to be able to get close to the players. They hit home run balls. You could keep them, foul balls. Now they want you to return the balls back. You don't have the access you used to, and the prices has gotten out of hand. But saying all that, it's still fun to be here, but it's not as good as it used to be. So you're 100% right there. I agree with you.
So tell me, Jack, what are you looking for, or what are you looking forward to in spring training? What are you what are you going to have your, besides just seeing the team itself, what are you going to have your eye out for?
Well, I'm anxious to see, the new guy Paxson. I want to see, if Ellsbury comes back, and really, and mostly the big thing is the first base. Is it going to be Voit, or is it going to be Bird, or are they going to pick up a free agent before the end of spring training? So, the Yankees are pretty well set. I do hope they get another pitcher, and I think at some point they will before opening day.
Yeah, if they can stay healthy, I mean, I think their starting pitching is good, not great, but good. Their bullpen on paper is really deep, but their starting pitching is extremely fragile. And, it seems as though, from what I see from writers, a lot of writers, to me, they've given the Yankees starting pitching a little bit too much credit. They got Paxton, but last year, Paxton pitched 160 innings, and that was the first year he got that high. Before that, I think his max was in the 130s. Severino, I've said this before. All right, well, after the Yankees lost to the Astros for the AL Championship in 2017, after that, I looked, and Severino went about 50 or 60 innings more than he ever had before in his life, including the playoffs. And that is, to me, that's a red flag, okay? It's really the numbers on pitchers that have gone 30 or 40 more innings, young pitchers, I should say, that have gone 30 or 40 more innings over their previous high. They tend to get injured. And I wonder if Severino was not right in the second half last year. His velocity was good, but I wonder if he was hurt and he didn't have that same command, because he was not good in the second half. You can't, based on the second half, you can't say, you can't just pencil him in as an automatic like he was in the first half. He was a totally different pitcher. Happ looks like he's a solid journeyman, but at his age, you never know when a player is going to fall off the cliff. CC as well. I mean, you don't know. Tanaka is fragile. It goes all the way through. It's a very questionable. It's a pitching staff with a lot of potential, but very questionable, very fragile. So I look at that. I also would like to see how Gary Sanchez comes back, because I tell you what, Gary Sanchez is just as key to making the other players better in that lineup as Aaron Judge is, and in the way that he is pitched to, and in the way that other players will be pitched to in that lineup. And the third thing I'm looking for is I think we're going to see more of the Florida Stanton than we saw the New York Stanton. And the New York Stanton wasn't so terrible. I mean, the guy hit 38 home runs, knocked in a little over 100 runs. It's like, from another player, you'd say, hey, that's great. But, expectations were very high.
And pressure was very high, too. The pressure on this guy the pressure last year was very high on Stanton. Say what you want, but it's New York.
It's New York, but you know what? Until Sanchez, even if Sanchez didn't get off to a good start, he showed some glimpses before he got hurt. Judge, Didi, he had a lot. He did have a lot of guys around him. So it was, and Duhar was hitting Gleyber Torres. So he was in New York. But he didn't have the microscope on him as coming to New York to be the guy. He came to New York being one of the guys, not the guy, and one of many guys. So I can't say that. Maybe he put the pressure on himself, but I don't think the glaring pressure was on him. If he was coming to a team that was devoid of a superstar.
Good points. Very good points.
Yeah, he was just part of the
air. We were talking off the air about something that really interested me, and that was the first game that you ever attended, Wayne, wasn't a Yankee game. It was a Met game. And
it was a Met game.
It was a Met old-timer game. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I probably chose to go Saturday instead of Sunday because it was Old Timers Day. And like I was telling you and Jack, my father was not into sports at all. My older brother was not into sports at all. So I actually didn't go to my first game till 1966. I was 11 and a half, and I went with a friend of mine. And the Mets were playing the Braves. And I remember they blew the Braves out that day. And in the first inning, I forgot, I'm almost sure it was a left-handed batter. So it might have been Kranepool, can't remember for sure. But I remember, it was almost like a line drive home run. And Hank Aaron leaped above the wall, above the fence, it seemed like. And I thought he snagged the ball. And then, but everybody's cheering. And I'm looking. I'm like, wait, what's going on? And then I see Aaron just walking around out there, just waiting for whoever to trot the bases. And the Mets blew the Braves out that day. They blew them out. Unfortunately, after that, I was. It wasn't as though I was a good luck charm. I witnessed very few Met victories for a long time to come. But it was also Old Timers Day, and I remember Carlton Willie was he pitched. He was the old timer pitcher for the Mets, and he had just retired the year before. Don't forget, the Mets only were formed in '62, and and the reason my first game also was a Met game is because Ralph and I live a mile and a half from Shea Stadium. So back in those days, an 11-year-old kid didn't go to the Bronx, didn't ride from Queens to the Bronx on his own, to go to a Yankee game. So, hey, Jack, so you were on Retro Sheet. Did you find that game?
I'm still looking for it. I can't find the big blowout, though.
It was when I say blowout, I mean let's just say it was 8-0.
Okay.
If the Mets won a game in those days, it was a blowout.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Jack, because your passion shows through Wayne so much. And Jack's passion, when we were talking off the air, showed through on an old-timers day that he attended. This was at Yankee Stadium. But you said, and this really made me smile, you weren't old enough to see Jackie Robinson and those guys play when they played. But you can honestly say you saw Jackie Robinson play because there was an old-timers game that you attended, and you told us about it off the air. And tell us if you would.
Well, the first game I went to was a Saturday. It was August 8th, 1964, and the Yankees lost to the Orioles 6-5, and I still have the ticket stub. But I remember seeing Joe D play in the old-timers game. So 35 years later, I went to a baseball card show in Philadelphia. and I picked up the New York Daily News from August 9th, 1964, and I was looking at the box score here, and for the opponents, Dom DiMaggio played, Pee Wee Reese, Wally Moses, Heine Manouche, Hank Greenberg, Jackie Robinson, Luke Appling, Bob Feller, Dizzy Dean, Satchel Paige, Don Newcomb, and for the Yankees, you had Phil Rizzuto, Red Rolfe, Gil McDougall, Tommy Henrich, Gene Woodling, Hank Bauer, Joe DiMaggio, Vic Rassi, Charlie Keller, Frank Crosetti, Jerry Coleman, Yogi played, Ali Reynolds, Lefty Gomez, Bud Chandler, Eddie Lopat, Johnny Mize. And I mean, so that's incredible. I mean, wow. I didn't know how fortunate I was.
When I was a kid, these guys were at old-timers games were Lefty Grove and those people. I never got to see it, as I was saying off the air. I had the privilege, I was blessed to go to summer camp every year. But that meant I never got to see an old-timers game ever in New York as a kid. And I missed out, just as you say. Imagine seeing Joe DiMaggio play. How about this, as an old-timer? I saw Joe DiMaggio play in 1951. My grandfather took me to all three stadiums, and I don't really remember the game itself, but I remember where we were sitting, and I remember him pointing out several times, he says, look at that guy in center field right out there. That's Joe DiMaggio. You saw him play. It's his last year. And boom, boom, boom. And he really put it in my head that I was seeing Joe DiMaggio. It's all I remember about that game. But so I saw him play in a game. But never did as an old-time. I never did get to see an old-timers game. So take the good with the bad. And,
well, the good thing, Ralph, I do remember Joe DiMaggio playing that day, and he got a base hit. So that's really? Another memory. I distinctly remember because we were sitting in the mezzanine behind the pole, and it was $2.75.
What is your thinking about Joe DiMaggio when you look back on his career? And I'll ask you both. What stands out when you think Joe DiMaggio? What comes to mind when?
Well, listen, I just remember hearing about, I would hear stories about Joe DiMaggio, and lots of people would say he was the greatest center fielder ever, and on and on. I remember the commercials for Bowery Savings Bank and Mr. Coffee. So it wasn't until I got older, and when I say older, it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I really started digging into baseball history. And unfortunately, by then, a lot of the negative concerning Joe's personality was out by then too. The stories about how he treated Mickey Mantle, how he was driven by money. There was a story in the book. What was that? Ben Creamer. There was a story in the book that Ben Creamer wrote about Joe DiMaggio, where somebody was at a party and asked Joe DiMaggio for an autograph, and Joe said, "Sure." He said, "And write me a check." I forgot what the amount was. He wrote him a check, and he gave it to him. And Joe said, "Thank you." He goes, When you get the cash check back, you'll have my signature."
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, because and for the young people out here that might be listening, back in the day, every month with your bank statement in the mail, you got copies, you got your cash checks back. They were stamped, and and you would see the signature on the back of the person who cashed the check. So that's how that was Joe DiMaggio, and the stories about him and Mantle. What can I say? But you know what? But Ralph, do you remember when we had Ron Bloomberg on, and you asked Ron Bloomberg about his memories of Yankee Old Timers Day, and
right.
and Ron was saying he was like, I don't know if he was a rookie, but he was young, he was new to the league, and he said that Joe DiMaggio, came up to him and said, hey, can we share the locker? Can I share your locker? And asked him for a set of cleats. And so he said Joe was really nice to him. So,
And I've had Tony Castro as a guest a number of times. And Tony Castro wrote a book, The Maj and the Mick, or something of that effect. A lot of those stories that you're hearing, not that DiMaggio wasn't arrogant, not that he wasn't at that point in his career, fading, and the new guys coming in, and all they had is the ego of their athleticism. These guys, he didn't know he'd be Mr. Coffee. He didn't know a lot of things about his future. So that if you take that into consideration, he and Mantle got along really well on a lot of levels. And I'll never forget the picture when Mantle stuck his foot in the drain in Yankee Stadium in the World Series on a ball that Willie Mays hit to right center field, and pulls up short and really destroyed what could have been a career as literally the best player in baseball. He was the most talented player, just pure physical skills, speed. He was as fast as Cobb. He was unbelievable. And he played his whole career with a damaged knee. So, anyway, given that, DiMaggio's standing over him when he went down, and it wasn't the picture of a man who was uncaring. Let's put it that way. And there's been a lot of misconceptions. You're right about one thing. He was absolutely money-driven and pompous and just arrogant. Anybody who needed to be introduced as the greatest player, this, that, and the other thing, and wouldn't come out unless you introduced him that way. He had some weaknesses in his persona, let's put it that way. But I want to know how he ranks in your mind. I'll start with you again, because I want to go to start with you, Wayne, because I want to go to Jack's overall impressions of DiMaggio. How does DiMaggio rate among the all-time center fielders, in your opinion, Wayne?
Well, all right, but let me qualify this first by, just talking about film that I saw, have seen, and what I've read and what I've heard from other people. So you talk about top 10 center fielders. I mean, well, first you got to think about, the great center fielders. So so who do we have? Who are we ranking them against? I mean, certainly I guess you can put him in the top 10. Now, of course, and again, I'm counting defense as well. So you got to put him and Mays and Mantle right up there in the top three.
Tris Speaker, how about that? Very underrated.
I mean, Speaker, but you know what? With Speaker, I'm going strictly by numbers, and it's also a little, yeah, and it's a little difficult to I know supposedly, all the analytics are supposed to break it down to be able to help you compare errors. But you know what? You're talking about, but it was just different. It was a different ball, and also it was a and the other thing is you got to take into consideration with Joe D, as well as Speaker, it was a non-integrated league. So, and there was something that Jeremy Lehrman wrote the other day where he was doing like a top 10 list. He did a thing about best and greatest, okay? So basically, like when you talk about greatest, you had Babe Ruth on at the top of the list. But when you talk about best, I believe you had Willie Mays at the top of the list. He said Ruth would probably be around number 10, but he said back then, he goes, like, there was a huge difference between Ruth and, like, the average player as opposed to Mays and the average player because, by then baseball was integrated and, there was just a larger pool and there were better players. I mean, think about, like, what would Ruth's stature had been the same had he been in an integrated league based on the history that we have of the Negro leagues. So it's a tough question, but I mean, let's just say he's easily in the top 10. Probably someone with a greater knowledge of him might be able to present the case and put him in the top 5. I don't know if I'd put him ahead of. I don't know if I'd put him ahead of Mantle and Mays.
Okay.
So with that, I'll defer to Jack.
Yeah, your turn, Jack.
Well, the thing is, Ralph, it's really hard, Wayne, because we never seen Joe D play except Ralph seen him play, and he was on 10 World Series and he won 9 of them.
I was 4.5, 5 years old, by the way. 19.
Well, you have a good memory, Ralph, if you remember that.
Thank my grandfather for that. He fueled my passion for it all in that 1 year.
Well, that's great. But I'll share a story with you guys that Johnny Blanchard told me. And we were just talking about the Yankees, and out of nowhere he was talking Old Timers Day, how the old timers had to stay away from the new guys, so they had a room in the back. But he come out and he said, he goes, DiMaggio turned asshole, he goes, in the last years of his life. He said they were doing a show, a sports card show in Dallas. It was Johnny Blanchard, Mickey Mantle, Moose Skowron, and Joe DiMaggio. So Johnny called one of the kids over, somebody working there. He said, could you go get Joe D's autograph and sign these 2 pictures for my sons or grandsons or something? The kid come back. Joe D wouldn't sign for him. So Moose asked the guy, could you go over and get Joe D to sign these 2 to my nephews or something? He wouldn't sign them. So Moose gets up and goes over to DiMaggio. He goes, what the hell's wrong with you? Don't you have enough money? You sign these things for these kids. Oh, and Joe D says, oh, okay, Moose. And when they got back to the hotel room that night, Moose goes, Blanchard, they go to Mickey, why don't you talk to him that way? And Mickey says, I can't. He's my idol.
Wow. I can't
I'll
think
tell
of a
you
better
guys.
way to end the show about Joe DiMaggio. Hey, guys, thank you. It's terrific. Wayne, I hope you'll come and join us more often.
I'll do the best I can, gentlemen. Jack, hopefully I'll see you in a month or so. Maybe in a few weeks. You never know.
Can you hang on for 5 minutes, Wayne, after, we hang up?
Surely.
Okay,
Beautiful.
Thanks.
I'm going to hang up. You guys talk, and I'll put it off the air. Thank you both. The show is Degraw's Yankees. I'm Ralph Tycho, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Privileged to have Wayne back, my consigliere at Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.